Hey guys, tonight we're pouring a full can of historical nonsense straight into your ears because we're tackling the caffeinated carnage that is the Red Bull body count nobody wants to talk about. Yes, you heard right. Forget dragons, knights, or Viking berserkers. Tonight's real monster is liquid, slightly fruity, and marketed by a guy with frosted tips. Buckle up, because we're about to fall asleep to the true story of how a humble energy drink left more casualties in its wake than a medieval jousting tournament after open bar. But first, before you lose consciousness or your heart rate gets any ideas, take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this stuff. Comment below where you're listening from. Now, dim those lights, turn on a fan for maximum ASMR, and get comfortable. Tuck yourself in so the Red Bull can't get you. Don't forget to hide your keys, your dignity, and any wings you might accidentally grow by morning. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what Red Bull has actually done to the world? How did it go from a weird, medicinal Thai soda to fueling all-nighters, dance floors, and people who think bungee jumping off a skyscraper is a brand activation? What happens to your organs after 6 cans? Did anyone ask for vodka to taste like battery acid? Has anyone survived the great Red Bull crash of 2009? Do you get bonus points if your heart skips a beat while writing an email at 2 a.m.? Does Red Bull really give you wings, or just a lot of paperwork for your next of kin? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the late 1990s. The world is about to get turbocharged. And somewhere, a marketing executive is about to become both very rich and very, very sued. Good luck. You wake up in 1987 Austria, where the air is thick with Europop and questionable business ideas. In a tiny office, Dietrich Mateschitz cracks open a new tonic, imported from Thailand. He takes a sip. The taste is medicinal. The effects are suspiciously energizing, and the aftertaste could strip paint. Congratulations, you've just witnessed the birth of Red Bull and a headache that will echo through the decades. Let's set the scene. The world is pastel, the mullet is king, and the Berlin Wall is still standing. In Austria, energy means a good schnitzel and maybe not falling asleep at your typewriter. You're in a city that knows how to waltz but has never experienced the subtle terror of 80 milligrams of liquid motivation. Somewhere in a fluorescent-lit office, Dietrich, who looks like he's auditioning to play the villain in a Bond film, is about to make a decision that will haunt college students, club DJs, and your nervous system for generations to come. He lifts a tiny can with a logo that looks like it was designed during a minor panic attack. The label says, "Creating Dying," which sounds both exotic and slightly illegal. This is not your grandmother's ginger ale. You watch him sniff it, eyes narrowed like he's trying to figure out if he's about to invent a beverage or accidentally dissolve his upper palate. He drinks. The moment is quiet. Somewhere in the background, a fax machine weeps in anticipation. This is the moment marketing history is made. Dietrich feels the electric prickle of caffeine and taurine pulsing through his veins, and instead of running to the nearest hospital, he runs the numbers. What if, he wonders, we make this taste slightly less like cough syrup and slightly more like the future? The plan: import the concept, tweak the recipe, slap on a logo featuring 2 mutant oxen, and convince an entire continent that what they need is less sleep and more something. You look around at the marketing materials. Everything is blue and silver. The word energy is being tossed around like it means something. There's a stack of surveys saying that Austrians are not sure about the flavor and a little scared of the color. Meanwhile, Dietrich is undeterred. After all, this is a man who believes the secret to happiness is doing everything twice as fast and half as rested. He recruits some investors who are mostly just happy to be invited to anything in 1987, and they toast to the future with a liquid that tastes like ambition, regret, and citrus-scented floor cleaner. Soon, the first cans hit Austrian convenience stores. You watch as a confused teenager cracks one open, grimaces, and then something strange happens. His eyes widen, his posture straightens, and he proceeds to mop the entire shop, invent a dance move, and write a mediocre techno song in under 30 minutes. Word spreads. Is it a miracle? Is it poison? Is it the end of polite society as we know it? The answer, as always, it's complicated. Red Bull isn't just a drink. It's a dare. You take a sip, and suddenly you believe in the impossible. That you can finish your paperwork by midnight. That your band will headline at the club. That your thesis will write itself, if you just stay awake long enough. The marketing department leans into this. They print posters promising vitality, performance, concentration, all the things you used to have before you started drinking energy drinks. But here's the real magic. Dietrich isn't selling a beverage. He's selling potential. You're not just drinking something fizzy and strange. You're buying the fantasy that you too can run on fumes and look cool doing it. You don't need sleep, you need wings. And as for the taste? Well, like all truly dangerous things, you'll learn to love it. Or at least, you'll learn to ignore it. By the end of the year, the first cans are flying off shelves. Students, clubbers, truck drivers, everyone who ever resented bedtime, are now believers. You look at the empty cans piling up and realize you're witnessing the beginning of something unstoppable. The world has had its first taste. And there's no going back. Sleep is dead. The future is carbonated. And somewhere, in a quiet Austrian office, Dietrich Mateschitz sips his second can and smiles. The headache? It's worth it. Because history, like caffeine, always starts with a jolt. It's 1990, and the entire world is still blissfully ignorant about taurine, Red Bull's genius marketing plan, convince the chronically exhausted that sleep is for quitters. You wander through Vienna watching teams hand out free cans to hungover college students, people in mascot costumes, and anyone who looks like they've made a bad decision this week. This isn't the kind of advertising you see for toothpaste or soup. No. Red Bull is rewriting the rules. Instead of explaining what's in the can or how to pronounce guarana, they go for something bolder, creating need where none existed. Sleep, it turns out, is suddenly a sign of personal weakness. Rest is for medieval peasants and babies. You're a citizen of the future. Why nap when you can mainline ambition, liquid and ice cold, straight from a blue and silver can? You watch as the first Red Bull Wings teams roll out onto university campuses. They don't look like salespeople. They look like the after-party from a failed fashion show. Leather jackets, tight jeans, and that mysterious energy of people who have never blinked. They cruise around Vienna in tiny branded minis packed with cans and questionable decision-making skills. At every stop, they offer free samples delivered with a knowing wink as if to say, "Try this, and you'll never need to waste time on sleep or self-reflection again." College students are their first converts. You see bleary-eyed philosophy majors, clutching term papers, and existential dread suddenly perk up after one sip. "What's taurine?" someone asks. "Don't worry," says the Wings team. "It's science." You watch as a philosophy major goes from contemplating the meaning of life to contemplating whether he can get to Berlin and back before lunch. No one's entirely sure what the drink does, but they do know it's legal. And that's apparently all the reassurance they need. The magic trick here is that Red Bull never pretends to be a soft drink. No smiling children, No gentle bubbles, no hint of health. This is a product built for hustlers, students, night owls, and anyone convinced that tomorrow is just a rumor. At sporting events and club nights, the Red Bull team is everywhere, handing out cans to everyone from exhausted security guards to people wearing animal onesies and regretting their life choices. It's the kind of word-of-mouth campaign that spreads faster than a conspiracy theory at a family barbecue. You notice the subtle genius. Instead of begging for attention, Red Bull creates a sense of mystery. They don't flood the airwaves with jingles. They show up where nobody else would bother, at ungodly hours, in places the respectable brands fear to tread. After midnight at student dorms, sunrise at the airport, the final 30 minutes of every dreadful accounting conference. Every time you think you've escaped, someone in a branded cap hands you a free can and a look that says, "We know you're tired. We're tired too. Join us." Pretty soon, it isn't just the college kids who are hooked. Taxi drivers, club promoters, grad students, and even the exhausted guy who cleans the train station at 4 a.m. All of them are now running on Red Bull and pure denial. There's no instruction manual. You don't need one. It's simple. Drink, survive, repeat. The only warning label is the growing suspicion that your sleep cycle is about to become a myth. By the end of the first year, Red Bull has transformed from a weird, imported tonic into the secret handshake of the sleep-deprived elite. If you see someone with a can in hand, you know they've seen things, like sunrise from the wrong side, and maybe a few mild hallucinations. Red Bull is no longer selling a beverage. They're selling the fantasy of endless momentum. You're not tired. You're just pre-caffeinated. And in the midst of it all, nobody really asks what happens next. There are rumors of crashing, but crashing is for people with free time. As the campaign barrels ahead, you realize that the world is about to change. One twitchy, wide-eyed sip at a time. Sleep, as a concept, is obsolete. Productivity is a beverage, and you can buy it by the can. You leave Vienna knowing that you've just witnessed the birth of a marketing juggernaut. One that doesn't care about your bedtime, your health, or your dignity. The world will never sleep the same way again. Suddenly, Red Bull is everywhere. Billboards, TV ads, and absolutely nobody understands what it is, but they want it. You're now living in a universe where your grandma knows what an energy drink is. And even your local priest is eyeing a can before Sunday Mass. It happens fast. One day, the world is powered by coffee and the hope that nobody notices you napping at your desk. The next, Red Bull has crashed through the gates of global consciousness like a sugar-fueled battering ram. You walk outside and there it is. Bus stops wrapped in metallic blue, magazine covers that look like they were designed during a particularly energetic episode of Miami Vice, and commercials featuring stick-figure people doing things like skydiving into board meetings or spontaneously growing wings and flying out the window. Nobody's quite sure what the drink actually does, but the message is clear. If you don't have Red Bull, you're basically living in the dark ages. In the supermarket, the cans multiply. The energy drink aisle appears, as if overnight, wedged awkwardly between sports drinks and sodas that now look as old-fashioned as a rotary phone. You watch an elderly woman squint at the label, shrug, and toss 3 cans into her cart. She's not sure what taurine is, but she's pretty sure her garden club will never be the same. There's a sense of adventure, a curiosity, a faint whiff of danger, like you're buying fireworks, not a beverage. Even the language of Red Bull is infectious. Suddenly, people are crushing deadlines and hitting the grind. Your friend who never left his house after 7 p.m. is now inviting you out to a club at midnight, citing extra stamina. Teenagers are whispering about the mythical double can, while office workers pass them out like forbidden fruit. Somewhere, An entire marketing department is high-fiving itself into another dimension. Red Bull's advertising takes over television. You can't watch 5 minutes of anything without seeing those minimalist cartoons, always ending with the catchphrase that, by now, has become prophecy. Red Bull gives you wings. Never mind that the closest you'll get to flying is a brief moment of existential terror during a staff meeting. The idea sticks. People repeat it at parties, at work, during family reunions where everyone's pretending they're not already on their third can. And here's the thing, nobody actually knows what's in it, and that's part of the mystique. The ingredients list reads like the side effects from an experimental drug trial. Caffeine, taurine, glucuronolactone, which sounds like something that could power a spaceship or dissolve a penny. No one asks questions because, frankly, everyone's too busy being productive. If the taste still reminds you of cough syrup and sadness, you just power through it. Success, after all, never tasted sweet. You notice the creeping shift. Red Bull isn't just a beverage, it's an accessory. People start matching their outfits to the cans, tucking them into gym bags, and arranging empty cans on their desks like little trophies from a gladiatorial arena of late-night hustling. In college dorms, the empty can pyramid is the new flex, a monument to ambition, procrastination, and poor life choices. Even sports can't escape. Red Bull sponsors everything with a pulse and a chance of injury. Formula One cars, BMX bikes, cliff diving, things that seem scientifically designed to make insurance agents cry. You turn on the TV and see a man jumping out of the stratosphere with a Red Bull logo on his helmet. This is not your father's Gatorade. You think back to a time before the caffeinated empire, when a yawn was just a yawn and not a moral failing. But that era is over. The world has been conquered, not by armies or kings, but by a fizzy, citrus-flavored potion and the promise of unlimited energy. You have to respect the audacity. At family gatherings, your grandma brings a 6-pack of Red Bull for emergencies. Your priest casually slips a can into his robe before Sunday Mass. You realize, with a mix of pride and existential concern, that you are living through a true empire, one built on sleepless nights, questionable decisions, and the eternal hope that, just maybe, you'll finally get those wings. Welcome to the reign of Red Bull. Sleep is optional, FOMO is forever, and everyone, everywhere, is just one sip away from trying to break the sound barrier, whether that means skydiving from space or making it through Monday without a nap. Somewhere, a doctor tries to explain to a room full of executives that 80 milligrams of caffeine per can might not be a wellness elixir. You're in the back, nodding politely while the head of marketing doodles a stick figure growing wings and crash landing into a lawsuit. Let's be honest, this was always going to be a tough meeting. On one side, you have a sleep-deprived medical professional waving a stack of printouts about potential adverse effects and recommended daily limits. On the other, you have a table full of brand managers whose job is to make insomnia sound like a competitive sport. The doctor carefully points at charts, showing what happens when your heart is exposed to more caffeine than a college sophomore during finals week. The response? Blank stares, nervous laughter, and one intern quietly Googling tachycardia. Welcome to the awkward crossroads where science, ambition, and capitalism meet. It's a little like watching a tug-of-war between your mum and your favorite bartender. Except the rope is your central nervous system, and nobody wants to let go. The marketing department isn't here to talk about side effects. They're here to make people believe that restless energy is not just an acceptable state of being, but a desirable one. You want to be alert? Here's enough caffeine to make a houseplant do calculus. There's a moment where the doctor tries to explain taurine. It's an amino acid, originally isolated from bull bile, she says. The room goes quiet. Someone coughs. The head of PR shrugs. Let's just call it a performance booster. And just like that, taurine transforms from an unsettling trivia answer to the star ingredient of the world's fastest-growing beverage. You try to imagine how that meeting would play out today, in an era of wellness influencers and clean energy. Spoiler, it wouldn't. But this is the 90s. If it fizzes and you can sell it, you're basically a chemist. Science presents one more argument. Studies about increased heart rate, blood pressure, and the ever-popular caffeine-induced panic attack. The marketers nod sympathetically, then immediately turn around and brainstorm a commercial where a cartoon rabbit vibrates through a concrete wall. The message? You don't just get energy, you get unstoppable power. Meanwhile, you're sipping your third sample can and reconsidering every choice you've made since the 7th grade. Eventually, someone mentions moderation. The idea is quickly shot down. Nobody markets moderation, says the head of branding. We're not selling kale. There's a shared chuckle, a round of high fives, and the sound of the doctor's last ounce of hope evaporating into the fluorescent air. The compromise is classic. Slap a warning label on the can and pray nobody reads it. You watch as the design team tries to make consume responsibly look edgy. Turns out, there's no cool way to warn someone they might have heart palpitations. From here, the science gets flexible. Studies are cherry-picked. Benefits like improved alertness and enhanced concentration are highlighted in bold, while minor risks, palpitations, insomnia, existential crises, are relegated to fine print. Every now and then, a concerned parents group tries to raise the alarm, but Red Bull's marketing machine is already 3 steps ahead, sponsoring skate parks and handing out samples at 5K runs. Who's going to listen to a doctor when there's free merch and a DJ? The gulf between science and sales keeps growing. The drink isn't just an energy boost, it's a lifestyle. It's about living on the edge, not reading the side effects. Medical warnings are for suckers. Real heroes live off 4 hours of sleep, caffeine, and blind optimism. You look around and realize this isn't a debate anymore. It's a full-scale, caffeine-fueled coup d'etat. In the end, the doctors are thanked for their time, given a gift basket, and shown the door. The executives return to brainstorming their next big campaign. Red Bull for breakfast, Red Bull for night shifts, Red Bull for anyone who wants to feel alive and slightly terrified at the same time. You leave the meeting, buzzing from both the caffeine and the collective disregard for basic biology. And so, science quietly exits stage left, replaced by cartoon wings, extreme sports sponsorships, and that ever-present, reassuring promise. Red Bull gives you wings. Just ignore the tiny print. History is being written, not in journals or medical records, but in glossy ads and empty cans. You can't make this stuff up. Except, of course, they did. It's the late 90s. You're at a university party. There's Red Bull, there's vodka, there's bad music, and someone's about to discover why mixing stimulants and depressants is a Darwinian experiment. You watch a guy do the worm for 40 straight minutes, then run a mile barefoot. Nobody sleeps, nobody blinks. Welcome to the golden age of caffeinated chaos, where the only thing more unstable than your GPA is your pulse. You arrive at the dorm, expecting stale chips and maybe a few polite conversations about philosophy. Instead, you're greeted by a pyramid of empty cans, a makeshift DJ booth running on pure bravado, and a sea of students who look like they haven't blinked since midterms. Someone hands you a Red Bull and vodka with a reassuring nod that says, "Trust me, this is science." Spoiler, it is absolutely not science. The party playlist is 70% techno, 30% regret, Every song sounds like it's set to 180 beats per minute because everyone in the room now has a resting heart rate somewhere between nervous hummingbird and NASA launch. There's a guy in the corner reciting Shakespeare at double speed, a group shotgunning cans in sync, and that one overachiever trying to write a term, paper, and dance at the same time. You'd think this is performance art, but no, it's just Tuesday. Here, Red Bull isn't a beverage, it's a survival tactic. You drink it to finish your reading, you drink it to pre-game, you drink it to erase the effects of the vodka you just drank. It's the academic equivalent of putting out a fire by pouring gasoline on it and hoping for the best. You can practically hear someone's internal organs negotiating for early retirement. But the real magic, the dangerous, beautiful, chaotic magic, is what happens when nobody sleeps. Suddenly, 2 a.m. feels like noon. A game of Monopoly has somehow evolved into strip poker and then back into Monopoly. Only now all the pieces are vibrating. Someone starts a group jog around campus. A feat that ends with 2 sprained ankles, and a police report that simply reads, "Suspects. Extremely alert." You find yourself deep in conversation about quantum physics with someone who, 30 minutes ago, couldn't remember their own major. And then comes the crash. Only, it doesn't happen all at once. You watch as the energy slowly drains from the room, eyelids droop, the music slows, and the Red Bull-fueled philosophers suddenly run out of opinions. For a brief, fragile moment, it's silent. The aftermath is a mosaic of abandoned cans, half-eaten pizza, and students passed out in positions that would alarm even the most experienced chiropractor. A few brave souls try to rally with one more can, but at this point, their bodies have started to rebel. You're pretty sure you just witnessed a case study in caffeine-induced existential crisis. You wake up the next morning in a pile of coats, the faint taste of aspartame still haunting your mouth. Outside, campus is eerily quiet. The only movement is the gentle clink of recycling bins overflowing with blue and silver. You pass a biology major who mutters something about circadian rhythm and permanent damage. But you both know that next weekend, everyone will do it again. Because if there's one thing college students love more than pretending to be adults, it's believing that the rules of biology don't apply to them, at least. Not until after finals. You trudge to class, adrenaline spent, and realize you've become part of a generation of amateur chemists, united by the misguided belief that you can outsmart sleep with enough sugar and caffeine. It's a rite of passage, a badge of questionable honor, and, if you're lucky, a story you'll someday tell your kids, right after you warn them never, ever to mix energy drinks with vodka. And as for that guy who did the worm, he's still awake, or at least his eyes are open, no one is quite sure. Welcome to the true laboratory of the Red Bull age. The college party, where the laws of science are tested nightly, and survival is its own kind of miracle. It's 2 a.m., you feel like you could run a marathon, solve a Rubik's Cube, and have a minor existential crisis all at once. Your heart is beating a techno remix inside your chest. Welcome to the first night of a lifetime subscription to mild cardiac regret. You sit in your room, surrounded by the soft, slightly menacing glow of a half-dozen empty Red Bull cans. Outside, the city is quiet, but your brain is running Windows 98 at warp speed. Sleep is a distant concept, floating somewhere beyond the reach of your jittery limbs. Your legs are vibrating, your thoughts are racing, and you're pretty sure you can hear colors. You're not just awake, you're activated. This is what happens when you swap REM cycles for taurine. At first, it feels incredible. There's a moment of pure, crystalline focus, as if every neuron in your brain just put on a suit and showed up to work. You organize your desktop, reply to emails from 3 months ago, and finally, Read that article about morning routines of successful people while resolutely ignoring your own. The night hums with possibility. You could write a novel, invent a new cryptocurrency, or finally figure out where all your missing socks went. Everything feels achievable if you just ignore that weird tingling sensation in your left arm. But then, things start to shift. The clarity is replaced by a creeping restlessness. You glance at the clock and realize it's only been 9 minutes since you last checked. Your hands feel like they belong to someone else. Your heart, meanwhile, is holding its own private rave, thumping out a bass line that would embarrass the DJ from your college party days. You try to sit still, but your body refuses. It wants to do something, anything. Run a lap, reorganize your books by color, alphabetize your receipts, call your ex, and ask if she remembers that time you almost bought a kayak together. You consider meditation, but your mind is a riot of unfinished projects and deeply unhelpful thoughts. Should I buy a treadmill? Should I become a morning person? Can my neighbors hear my pulse from the hallway? You attempt deep breathing, only to discover that every inhale sounds like a panicked squirrel. The existential crisis hits right on schedule. What are you doing with your life? Why did you think 3 cans was a reasonable serving size? Is this what limitless potential feels like, or is it just a mild arrhythmia? You remember reading somewhere that caffeine overdose is rare, but not impossible. Suddenly, you're Googling your symptoms, scrolling past the reassuring it's fine and focusing only on the doomsday scenarios. Increased heart rate. Check. Sweaty palms. Check. Hallucinations about tiny Red Bull mascots doing the Macarena in your peripheral vision. Double check. The urge to call someone, anyone, battles with the urge to never admit you did this to yourself. Meanwhile, your phone buzzes. It's a friend, wide awake and equally wired. Hey, you up? Of course you are. You both exchange rapid-fire texts, agreeing that you could probably conquer the world right now, or at least clean your apartments. You make plans for breakfast at dawn. A shared pact built on delusion and excessive caffeine. Around 3 a.m., the effects start to plateau. You're not getting any more alert, just more introspective. Now you're evaluating your life choices, the meaning of time, and whether or not you actually like the taste of Red Bull, or if it's just Stockholm Syndrome. The city is still asleep, but you're a one-person marching band, heart and mind in a duet of questionable harmony. As the sky starts to lighten, you finally feel the edges of exhaustion nipping at your brain. Your heart slows, your thoughts get fuzzy, and you realize you've spent 6 hours doing everything and nothing at all. The great heart race ends not with a bang, but with a slow caffeine-laced whimper. You collapse into bed, equal parts, proud and ashamed, knowing tomorrow you'll swear off energy drinks forever. At least until next weekend. Because for every wild-eyed night of Red Bull-fueled chaos, there's a dawn filled with regret and just a hint of curiosity about what might happen if you try 4 cans instead of 3. Welcome to the Cardio Olympics. No medals, just a lot of second thoughts. You're reading the ingredients label by the glow of a vending machine. What exactly is taurine, you wonder, as you Google, can energy drinks turn you into a goat? The answer is no, but you're not convinced. It's a question as old as the energy drink aisle itself. Taurine. It sounds mysterious, vaguely scientific, and just a little bit sinister. Like something you'd find in a wizard's pantry, or in the fine print of a mad scientist's recipe book. You stand there, Red Bull in hand, squinting at the tiny white letters while your phone lights up with increasingly unhelpful answers. Naturally occurring amino acid, says one search result. Originally isolated from bull bile, says another. Suddenly, You're imagining a medieval apothecary scraping the inside of a cow and shouting, "Eureka!" as peasants flee in terror. And yet, taurine is everywhere, plastered across the packaging of every energy drink, gum, and vitamin shot, promising clarity and performance. You're not sure what it's supposed to do, but you assume if they're putting this much of it into your body, it must be good for you, or at least not immediately fatal. That's about as much assurance as you get from most modern food science. You dig a little deeper. The word taurine comes from Taurus, meaning bull, which feels like either very clever marketing or a weird inside joke among biochemists. You picture a bunch of scientists naming things after whatever's in their lunch. Your phone tries to reassure you. Taurine is found in meat, fish, even breast milk. Athletes love it, apparently, though nobody can tell you why. Your friend, who has taken one biology class, claims it helps the brain. When pressed for details, he just shrugs and drinks another can. Now, you're starting to wonder if taurine actually does anything, or if it's just a really elaborate placebo, like those magnetic bracelets or that time everyone thought eating kale would make you immortal. The energy drink companies swear it supports mental performance. The science, meanwhile, mumbles something about neurotransmitters, cell membranes, and modulating calcium signaling, which sounds impressive right up until you realize you don't know what any of it means. If you ask your doctor about taurine, you'll get the same look you get when you ask if 3 dinners in one night is technically unsafe. As you stand there, can in hand, you can't help but compare taurine to that friend who never really explains why he's at the party. He's always there, somewhere in the corner, possibly doing something important but never the center of attention. No one is quite sure where he came from or what he's planning, but the vibe is always just a little off. Is taurine secretly running the show? Or is it just along for the ride, enjoying the caffeine and sugar like everyone else? Meanwhile, the rumors swirl. Did you know taurine was banned in France? Someone whispers. You check. It wasn't, but it was monitored. That's comforting, right? Sort of like being watched by mall security. Another article claims taurine will make you superhuman. Another suggests it's the reason you have heart palpitations every time you climb a flight of stairs. Somewhere out there, a scientist is rolling their eyes. But for now, you're just trying to get through your Tuesday without spontaneously developing hooves. At some point, you realize it doesn't matter. Taurine could be a miracle, a myth, or the molecular equivalent of a practical joke, and you'd still drink the can because you have a deadline, 3 back-to-back meetings, and a desperate hope that something, anything, will make you feel alive and alert for just a little while longer. So, you shrug, pop the tab, and take a sip. It tastes the same as always. Slightly medicinal, a little weird, and somehow completely necessary. Maybe taurine is the secret source of productivity. Maybe it's just an excuse to keep chasing that caffeinated dragon. Either way, you're in too deep to stop now. And as the vending machine hums and the fluorescent lights flicker, you quietly promise yourself you'll do more research. Later. Right now, you've got places to be, things to do, and, thanks to taurine, the energy to do at least 2/3 of them. Science may never settle the taurine debate. But tonight, you're willing to believe in a little magic if it gets you through the night. Goat transformation or not. Breakfast of champions. A can of Red Bull, and a hope that nobody notices your hands shaking. 2 hours later, your crash landed on your keyboard, drooling and dreaming about salad. The cycle begins again. It starts so innocently. You skip breakfast. Who has time for eggs and toast when you're already 15 minutes late for life? So, like a true modern gladiator, you crack open a cold can of Red Bull. It hisses at you, equal parts promise and threat, and before you know it, you're chugging liquid ambition with a side of questionable life choices. The first sip is sharp, sweet, and tastes a little like your dentist's office smells. You feel it hit your bloodstream almost instantly, a wave of synthetic energy that convinces you this is the day you'll finally get ahead on everything. For a brief, glorious moment, you are invincible. Spreadsheets submit to your will, emails practically write themselves. You're so productive that you start giving your coworkers unsolicited advice about streamlining their workflow, which, translated, means just drink more Red Bull and ignore your body's desperate cries for help. You check your pulse. Yes, it's fast, but isn't that just proof that you're alive? Then, like a cartoon coyote running off a cliff, you realize the ground beneath you is gone. Your mind starts to fog. Your hands, which were typing like a concert pianist an hour ago, now feel like they're covered in oven mitts. Words blur together. And suddenly the only thing you're capable of writing is your own resignation letter. You start Googling, how much sugar is too much sugar? But the answers just make you more anxious. Spoiler: it's less than you've just consumed. Here's the thing. Each can of Red Bull packs a not-so-small mountain of sugar, enough to make a dentist cry and a hummingbird anxious. You know this, but you ignore it, because the sugar rush is all that stands between you and the pit of adult responsibility. But what goes up must come down, and soon enough, you're plummeting toward the kind of fatigue that no motivational playlist can fix. At this point, your brain is bargaining. Maybe just one more can. It whispers. You can handle it, but you know the truth. Another hit will only prolong the inevitable. You stare at the vending machine, remembering simpler times like childhood, when a sugar rush meant sprinting around a playground and crashing into a juice box nap, not emailing your boss at 4 a.m. with a typo-laden plea for synergistic synergy. Meanwhile, your stomach is staging a rebellion. The mixture of caffeine, sugar, and whatever else is lurking in that mysterious proprietary blend is starting to feel less like rocket fuel and more like internal sabotage. You swear you can hear your pancreas sigh. By noon, you're craving anything green and unprocessed. You daydream about spinach, lettuce, maybe even a kale smoothie if things get desperate enough. Of course, by the time the afternoon hits and your energy is somewhere below sea level, the cycle begins again. You promise yourself you'll eat better tomorrow, maybe drink some water, possibly sleep more than 4 hours, but then you see that familiar blue and silver can winking at you from the fridge, and all those good intentions dissolve faster than a sugar cube in hot tea. There's a strange camaraderie in this ritual. At the office, you spot your fellow travelers, people whose eyes are just a bit too wide, hands clutching cans like talismans, all quietly praying that no one notices the crash coming. You exchange nods. A silent acknowledgement of shared sugar sins. You tell yourself you'll quit someday. You'll find balance. Become the person who jogs at sunrise and packs their own chia seed pudding. But for now, you accept the roller coaster. Sugar rush, sugar crash, repeat. It's not glamorous, but it gets you through, one sticky keyboard nap at a time. And tomorrow, the breakfast of champions is waiting, cold and suspiciously cheerful as ever. Somewhere in a law office, a group of lawyers try to argue, with a straight face, that nobody really expected to grow actual wings. You listen to the commercial on repeat and begin to question your own understanding of biology and advertising. This is how you know Red Bull has truly arrived. It's not just on your tongue and in your bloodstream. It's now deep in the legal system, tangled in the courts alongside copyright lawsuits and ambiguous McDonald's hot coffee warnings. You imagine a conference room full of very tired lawyers, hunched over contracts, watching that chirpy cartoon commercial for the 100th time. One sips a can of Red Bull, presumably for irony. The others just look like they wish the phrase truth in advertising had never been invented. The heart of the matter is this. For years, Red Bull has been promising you wings. Not metaphorically, not poetically, just straight up wings. Cartoon characters sip the can and float off into the sky, defying gravity, physics, and the basic tenets of evolutionary biology. It's catchy, it's memorable, and it's also, if you listen closely, legally dicey. Because as it turns out, there's always someone out there who takes slogans a little too seriously. The lawsuits start trickling in. Some are pure comedy. I drank 6 cans and couldn't fly. This is false advertising, while others get surprisingly philosophical. What is a wing? Someone asks. Could it be a feeling, a metaphor, an increased ability to procrastinate until the very last second? The judge, who is now reconsidering his entire career path, just wants everyone to agree that Red Bull did not, in fact, promise the gift of flight. In court, the lawyers tap dance around intent. Was it a literal promise? Or just clever marketing? You picture the plaintiff, perhaps a disappointed college student or a failed magician, standing solemnly in front of the judge and flapping their arms. The defense team offers a PowerPoint presentation on common sense, complete with diagrams showing the difference between energy, enthusiasm, and actual avian anatomy. Meanwhile, Red Bull's marketing team is somewhere off-screen, probably high-fiving each other and ordering pizza, because even bad press is still press. And nothing says cultural phenomenon quite like a lawsuit over imaginary body parts. Eventually, a settlement is reached. Red Bull agrees to pay out millions, not because anyone was actually harmed, but because, as it turns out, some people just really want their wings. There are gift cards, checks, and the kind of legal paperwork that makes you wish you'd just stuck to water. Somewhere, an enterprising law student writes a thesis on literalism in modern marketing and promptly falls asleep in the library, haunted by the sound of cartoon wings flapping. As for you, the viewer, you're left to reflect on the absurdity of it all. You've always known that drinking Red Bull wasn't going to turn you into a falcon or even give you the energy to do more than panic clean your kitchen. But the idea was just too good to resist. A perfect blend of humor, ambition, and the eternal human dream of rising above your circumstances, or at least your afternoon slump. From that day forward, the ads are tweaked. The warnings are louder, the fine print longer. Now, when you see the phrase Red Bull gives you wings, you're supposed to understand it means mental wings, wings of productivity or wings of pretending you're not exhausted. You accept this, mostly because it's either that or admit you once secretly hoped you'd start levitating during a PowerPoint presentation. You close the tab, set down your can, and wonder what other promises in life are a little more complicated than they appear. Because in the end, marketing is magic, and magic is just sleight of hand, minus the lawsuit. Hopefully, Red Bull may not give you wings, but it does give you stories, and sometimes that's almost as good, especially if you survive the fine print. You're at an air show. There's a guy jumping out of a plane with a Red Bull logo on his parachute. The crowd cheers. The paramedics frown. And somewhere, a brand manager congratulates themselves on making danger look like good, clean fun. This is the moment you realize Red Bull's empire isn't built on taste or nutrition labels, it's built on adrenaline, spectacle, and the kind of activities that cause insurance agents to break out in hives. If you can strap a camera to it, launch it off a cliff, or attempt it at speeds that make your grandma clutch her pearls, Red Bull wants its logo on it. You look around and notice, this isn't your average sporting event. No, this is the circus of the sleep. Deprived, sponsored by caffeine and sheer, unfiltered bravado. Everywhere you turn, there's another daredevil. A BMX rider attempting a flip over a flaming obstacle. A snowboarder launching themselves off an improbably large ramp. A skydiver with the composure of a Buddhist monk. And the life expectancy of a mayfly. Even the event staff look hyped up. Maybe it's the product. Maybe it's the proximity to all these helmeted maniacs. And over it all, the Red Bull logo is everywhere. On banners, gear, the blimp hovering overhead, and the terrified dog with its own branded bandana. Red Bull has done what no health drink ever dreamed. It's become a passport to the wild side. You don't just drink it for energy. You drink it so you can pretend you're training for a base jump or a volcano surf. Normal sports aren't enough. They want wingsuit flights through mountain passes, cliff diving competitions, and soapbox races that start with a prayer and end in viral YouTube clips. It's not enough to win, you have to survive in style. The beauty and absurdity of it is that Red Bull isn't sponsoring established sports. They're inventing new ones. If you can't find an existing event wild enough, just make one up. There are contests for things you didn't even know were possible. Ice cross downhill, urban slacklining, or free running across the rooftops of Rio. Every time you think they've reached the limit, someone announces a new challenge that sounds like it was dreamed up after 4 cans and no sleep. The athletes themselves are a new breed. Equal parts stunt performer, brand ambassador, and existential philosopher. You watch as a skateboarder, covered in more logos than clothing, describes his latest trick. I'm going to ride down this handrail, launch over that flaming hoop, and hopefully not dislocate anything important. The crowd cheers. The paramedics prepare. You sip your Red Bull, heart pounding, half terrified and half inspired. Of course, there's an element of spectacle here that's impossible to ignore. It's a marketing masterstroke. Instead of traditional ads, Red Bull turns every extreme sport into a living, breathing commercial. The message is simple. Drink this, and maybe you'll find the courage to do something slightly less dangerous, like taking the stairs 2 at a time or going to work on 3 hours of sleep. The brand isn't just selling energy, it's selling the idea that you too can be a legend if you survive. By the end of the air show, you realize you haven't blinked in 20 minutes. The stunts are over, the crowd is filing out, and the field is littered with empty cans and broken dreams. Somewhere, the Red Bull team is already planning their next event, possibly involving jetpacks, underwater wrestling, or competitive mountain lion tickling. The only certainty is that it'll be fast, loud, and probably inadvisable. You leave with the distinct impression that, in the world of Red Bull, the laws of physics are just suggestions, and the only thing more impressive than surviving the event is landing a sponsorship deal. Maybe you'll never fly a wingsuit through the Alps, but at least you can conquer your inbox with the courage of a caffeinated daredevil. Extreme sports. Come for the thrill, stay for the branding, and try not to end up as a cautionary tale. And remember, if you walk away in one piece, you're already a winner in Red Bull's book. In 2009, an entire dance marathon goes silent as 3 Red Bulls in a row take down your best friend. You're left holding their glow stick, contemplating life, death, and why the DJ is playing Sandstorm again. It all seemed like such a good idea at the time. The night had started with high energy and higher expectations. You and your friends were ready to conquer the 12-hour dance fundraiser like caffeinated gladiators. There were costumes, coordinated routines, and someone had even brought glitter. The plan was simple. Stay awake, stay hyped, and raise money for charity. But by hour 6, it's no longer a party. It's a social experiment on the limits of human endurance and the questionable ethics of unlimited energy drink access. Your best friend, let's call him Greg, had already crushed one can during the opening Macarena. He hit a second during an interpretive dance to living on a prayer. And by the time Sandstorm came back on for the third time that night, he was downing his third Red Bull like it was holy water. You saw the moment it happened. 1 second, Greg is doing the worm across the gym floor with the grace of a caffeinated dolphin. The next, he's flat on his back, eyes open, soul temporarily disconnected from his body. The music cuts. The fog machine hisses in confusion. 100 teenagers, frozen mid-dab, turn to look. The DJ leans into the mic with the gentle concern of someone who's definitely not qualified for this moment. Greg? But Greg is busy astral projecting through the caffeine dimension. You kneel beside him, holding his glow stick like a torch passed on to the next generation. He mumbles something about his heart, trying to start a band inside his chest. Paramedics are called, not because Greg's in mortal danger. He's stable, just very, very awake. But because someone needs to explain to him that lying on the floor, blinking at the ceiling tiles does not count as dancing. Meanwhile, a concerned volunteer offers you both a juice box, the universal sign that you've overdone it. You take it with shaking hands. You've learned something tonight. Something about limits. This wasn't just Greg's story, it was everyone's. Across the country, across campuses, Red Bull was the not-so-secret fuel of every all-nighter, late shift, and over-ambitious fundraiser. It turned sleep into a weakness and energy into a competitive sport. The crash wasn't a theory, it was an inevitability. You'd see it happen at 3 a.m., sharp, wide-eyed, jittery joy followed by sudden dramatic slumps into beanbags, gym mats, and occasionally walls. The Red Bull crash was unlike any other. It didn't politely tap you on the shoulder and ask if you'd like a nap. It tackled you like an angry linebacker, stole your motivation, and left your brain floating somewhere between déjà vu and total system failure. 1 minute you're invincible. The next you're halfway through a sentence and completely unable to remember what day it is. Time slows. Gravity increases. Your muscles feel like they've been replaced with wet pasta, and still people kept coming back. Greg came back. The next week, he was spotted with another can in hand, talking about how he'd paced himself better this time and how he'd trained for the crash. You nodded, knowingly. Because once you've survived the caffeine freefall, you think you can do it smarter. You never do. But the hope keeps you going. By the end of the semester, the dance marathon had quietly banned energy drinks. They never admitted it was because of Greg. But there's a sign now, right by the sign-in table. No outside beverages. Please drink water, a noble sentiment, and completely ignored. Because in the end, the legend of the crash lives on. Every caffeine veteran has their own Greg story, their own glow stick moment, their own midnight reckoning. And somewhere out there, a DJ is still playing Sandstorm, the official soundtrack of ambition, regret, and the exact moment your central nervous system gives up. It's Monday morning. You're 2 cans deep and haven't blinked since 8:30 a.m. Your boss asks for a report. You hand them a color-coded, annotated, 25-tab spreadsheet. You have no memory of making it. This is what we call corporate sorcery. Fueled by questionable levels of caffeine and a vague sense of dread, you've somehow transcended normal human office behavior. You didn't just make a spreadsheet, you created a digital cathedral to productivity. Conditional formatting? Done. Pivot tables? So many. One tab is labeled Existential Dread Tracker. And the scariest part? It's all accurate. Welcome to modern office life, where Red Bull is less a beverage and more a personality type. You don't sip it for pleasure. You gulp it like it's liquid permission to exist in a capitalist hellscape. Somewhere, between your second and third can, You enter what's known in corporate mythology as the flow state, that sacred, caffeine-induced trance where you can knock out a week's worth of work in 3 hours, then spend the rest of the day internally screaming. No one talks about it openly, but everyone knows. You see your coworker crack a can at 9:15 a.m., and you give them the nod, the silent salute of the highly caffeinated. Your manager walks in with a Red Bull and a haunted look in their eyes, and you know they have 5 meetings before lunch and no memory of sleep. It's not about getting ahead anymore. It's about survival. The office fridge is practically an energy drink shrine. There's one person who stocks the sugar-free kind, one who drinks only the tropical edition, and one guy who brings in foreign market flavors with mysterious names like Arctic Blitz or Neon Panther. HR is concerned, but also mildly impressed. During one quarterly check-in, the team lead references Red Bull as part of the department's strategic assets. You're not sure if they're joking. And then there's the 11 a.m. surge. You can feel it ripple through the cubicles. Fingers clack harder on keyboards. Slack messages get weirdly enthusiastic. Someone's playing pump-up music at a volume that's just slightly too loud. For the next 90 minutes, the office transforms into a caffeinated hive mind. Emails are answered in record time. Spreadsheets self-populate. PowerPoint presentations animate themselves. And someone finally figures out how to fix the printer jam that's been ignored since last October. But like all good things in this world, the high doesn't last. Around 1:30 p.m., the first signs of the crash emerge. Eyes glaze. Responses slow. Someone forgets how to use the copy machine. Your manager stares at the wall like it just personally betrayed them. You take another sip, hoping to coast until 3 o'clock, but you know in your heart the juice is gone. The rest of the day will be powered by fumes, muscle memory, and the primal fear of not meeting your Q4 goals. There's always one coworker who resists. I just do yoga and drink herbal tea, they say smugly, before retreating into their ergonomic chair. We respect them, we envy them. We also suspect they're part of a secret productivity cult that knows how to function without stimulants. You, meanwhile, are on your 4th can, writing a follow-up email to a follow-up email, and trying to remember if you already sent this spreadsheet or just hallucinated doing it. By 5 p.m., the office is quiet again. Everyone's either finished their work or forgotten what they were doing entirely. You gather your things, empty your recycling bin, a small shrine of blue and silver, and give a tired smile to the intern still vibrating in the corner. Another day, another adrenaline cycle. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. You'll sleep. You'll have breakfast, maybe switch to green tea. But deep down, you know, Red Bull is your office spirit animal now. Not because it tastes good, it doesn't, or because it's healthy, it isn't, but because it works. Until it doesn't. And then it's Tuesday. The spreadsheet is waiting. So is your destiny. And yes, so is another can. You watch a group of high schoolers shotgun Red Bulls behind a gas station. They're invincible until about 4th period, when one of them realizes that time is a flat circle and lunch is in 3 hours. This is where caffeine meets adolescence, the perfect storm of bad decisions and unlimited optimism. These teens aren't drinking Red Bull because they're tired. They're drinking it because they believe they are unlocking a cheat code to life. You remember those days when metabolism was a superpower, sleep was optional, and energy drinks were the closest thing to a rebellion you could afford on a lunch budget. It starts in the morning, probably around 7:15 a.m., right after their parents dropped them off and told them to make good choices. They nod politely, then beeline to the corner store for 2-for-1 cans of liquid destiny. There's no real plan, just the unshakable belief that Red Bull will help them survive algebra, dodge gym class, and possibly gain clairvoyance. They clink cans like they're in a medieval tavern and shotgun. with the confidence of kids who've never read a warning label in their lives. The energy hits around second period. You can see it happen. Pupils dilate, legs start bouncing, pens are twirled like nunchucks. Someone starts talking about starting a band. Another decides to launch a drop-shipping business from their Chromebook. The teacher is trying to discuss the Treaty of Versailles, but no one can hear her over the sound of 16-year-olds vibrating at frequencies only dogs can hear. By third period, chaos has bloomed. One student tries to debate the gym teacher on the cardiovascular benefits of dodgeball using vaguely remembered phrases from a Joe Rogan episode. Another one attempts a backflip in the hallway. Someone sets up an impromptu arm wrestling tournament, refereed by a kid who's consumed 3 cans and now identifies as Coach Dave. And then fourth period. The crash arrives silently, like a substitute teacher with bad news. One by one, the Red Bull warriors fall. Eyes get heavy. Foreheads rest on textbooks. The kid who did the backflip is now curled up under his desk, mumbling something about string theory and pizza bagels. It's not that they're tired, it's that their bodies are trying to renegotiate the terms of existence. The teacher continues lecturing, but it feels like talking into the void. Nobody is listening. Everyone is gently reconsidering every choice they made before sunrise. Lunch is still an hour away. That's when the existential dread sets in. Time stretches. Minutes feel like years. A kid stares at the clock and whispers, "It's been 10:37 for my entire life." Another student, once so full of potential, now just chews on their hoodie string and contemplates the nature of eternity. Red Bull promised wings, but nobody warned them they'd be Icarus, plummeting back to Earth with an unfinished math worksheet and mild nausea. The teachers? They've seen this before. They pretend not to notice, but they've long since developed a sixth sense for caffeinated panic. Some even keep a stash of saltines and juice boxes for the inevitable crash recovery. Others just let the kids ride it out, like a storm that passes after fourth period and leaves behind only empty cans and a faint smell of citrus and regret. By the time school ends, the teens have mostly returned to baseline. There's some denial. I feel great, actually, but the haunted eyes tell a different story. One kid swears off energy drinks forever. Another is already planning tomorrow's dose. They walk out in slow motion, bonded by shared delusion and minor tachycardia. And you, the observer, just shake your head because you've been there. You know the myth of invincibility. It's carved into every locker door and written between the lines of every teenage notebook. Red Bull didn't create this myth. It just gave it carbonation. And for a few dizzy hours between first bell and lunch, it was beautiful, dumb, dangerous, and beautiful. The bartender asks if you want to make it a double. You nod. The night dissolves into neon lights, shouting, and someone crying on the curb. By sunrise, nobody remembers ordering the pizza, or why there's a traffic cone in your kitchen. Ah, yes. The infamous Red Bull vodka. The cocktail equivalent of handing your brain a gas pedal and cutting the brake lines. It's the drink that says, I want to feel awake while making the worst decisions of my life. On paper, it's a simple mix, half caffeine-fueled ambition, half poor impulse control. But in practice, it's a magic potion that turns mild-mannered adults into spinning tops with no concept of time, volume, or dignity. You remember ordering it. Kind of. It always starts with confidence. You're out with friends, dressed semi-decently, ready to enjoy just one drink. You approach the bar like a responsible adult, and then, bam, the Red Bull vodka stares back at you like an unholy relic from the Temple of Chaos. Make it a double? The bartender asks. You laugh. Why not? You know why not. 5 sips in, and you're already having a faster internal monologue than a TED talk on double speed. The sugar hits first, sharp, fizzy, almost nostalgic. Then the vodka slides in, smooth and sly, whispering sweet nothings like, "You should definitely dance on that elevated surface." Your brain, now fully hijacked by the mix, nods in agreement. Reason leaves the building. Caution follows. What remains is a creature powered entirely by taurine and questionable confidence. By drink 2, you're deep in conversation with someone named Trevor about starting a startup that makes gourmet dog food subscriptions. It's genius. No one writes anything down. A girl you haven't seen since high school tells you she always knew you'd peak at karaoke. The lights seem brighter. Your hands are doing a lot of gesturing. Time feels like it's both speeding up and standing still. You are, at once, invincible and deeply unwell. This is the beauty and curse of Red Bull vodka. It cancels out all the natural warning signs that usually tell you to go home. You don't feel tired, you don't feel drunk, you just feel more. More energy, more volume, more opinions about topics you definitely aren't qualified to discuss. Politics? You've got takes. Quantum physics? Absolutely. The bartender's relationship with her father? You're suddenly a therapist now. Around midnight, things escalate. Someone suggests shots. You agree before they even finish the sentence. The group stumbles toward a karaoke booth, where you scream sing Bon Jovi at a pitch not known to modern science. At some point, someone spills an entire drink into their shoe and acts like that's normal. You make plans to travel to Iceland with a stranger named Devin. You add him on Instagram. Neither of you will remember this tomorrow. And then, sunrise. You wake up in your apartment. The lights are still on. Your shoes are in the freezer. There's a traffic cone in the kitchen, a pizza box on the floor, and a haunting feeling that you told someone a lot about your childhood. You sit up. The room spins gently. Your phone buzzes. A photo of you hugging a bouncer and captioned, "He's crying again." You make your way to the bathroom mirror. The reflection stares back, wide-eyed, dehydrated, and slightly sticky. Your heart is still doing jazz hands. You Google can vodka cancel out caffeine, but your vision is too blurry to read. The crash arrives not with a bang, but with a full-body existential shiver. You're exhausted, emotionally fragile, and swear you'll never touch the stuff again. Until next weekend. Because the Red Bull vodka fiasco is not a one-time mistake. It's a recurring event in the lives of people who should know better. It's the drink you regret, the story you retell, the blurry night that bonds you and your friends together in shared chaos. And deep down, you know this. It doesn't give you wings, but it sure knows how to take you for a ride. The sun is rising, and you're still awake, watching YouTube videos about raccoon intelligence. You have a paper due at 8 a.m. and the shakes. You've just discovered the true meaning of productivity panic. This is the spiritual sport of the modern age. The sleep deprivation Olympics. No medals, no glory. Just a nation of wide-eyed competitors powered by caffeine, fear, and the haunting glow of their laptop screens. You're on hour 9 of a quick study session, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans that look like futuristic trophies. Your fingers move automatically. Your brain, meanwhile, is halfway through composing a sonnet about how much you hate yourself. You didn't plan for this. Nobody ever plans to enter the sleep deprivation Olympics. It just happens. One moment, you're telling yourself you'll wake up early to finish the assignment. The next, it's 3:47 a.m., and you're doing trigonometry by candlelight like a caffeinated pilgrim. You take another sip. The Red Bull tastes like battery acid and anxiety, but you press on. You're not chasing success anymore. You're running from failure with the speed of someone who's read 3 Wikipedia articles about the effects of sleep loss on cognitive function. By 4:30, reality starts to blur. Your document is open, the cursor blinking in rhythm with your heartbeat. You try to form sentences, but everything comes out sounding like the ramblings of a motivational cult leader. Productivity is a state of mind, you type, nodding solemnly. Then you realize that's not the essay prompt. You delete it, or think you did. Hard to tell anymore. Your brain is now 70% taurine and regret. Meanwhile, the YouTube algorithm has decided you're no longer a student. You're a raccoon enthusiast. You watch a 5-minute video titled Raccoons, Nature's Tiny Engineers, and somehow find yourself emotionally invested. You whisper, "I could learn from them," before returning to your half-finished paper. You briefly consider adding a paragraph about raccoon adaptability to your essay on Renaissance literature. It almost makes sense. Almost. By 5 a.m., you enter the hallucination stage. The shadows move. Your keyboard feels alive. You start giving yourself pep talks in the bathroom mirror, the kind that sound vaguely heroic but deeply concerning. You're not tired. You're transcending fatigue. You slap your cheeks for motivation. It doesn't help, but it does wake your roommate, who's been peacefully asleep since midnight and now hates you deeply. As the sky begins to lighten, you feel the first pangs of existential dread. You've been awake so long that time has stopped being linear. You've gone through all 5 stages of grief and are now at stage 6. Acceptance with mild giggles. Your paper is somehow both too long and completely empty of meaning. You realize you've been quoting yourself for the last 2 paragraphs. The Red Bull cans stare at you accusingly from your desk, like tiny metallic judges, and then, suddenly, it's 7:58 a.m. You hit submit. You did it. Against all odds, you've finished. Victory tastes like recycled carbonation and tears. You sit back, triumphant, waiting for the rush of pride to hit, but instead, it's the crash. Your body, which has been running on borrowed time and borrowed energy, finally calls in its debts. Your hands tremble. Your eyelids weigh 10 pounds each. You try to stand up and immediately forget how knees work. You collapse into your chair, delirious and proud, like a gladiator who fought the lions and somehow lived. You wake up 3 hours later, slumped over your keyboard, drooling on the spacebar. Your inbox pings with a grade notification. You open it slowly, like defusing a bomb. It's a B-. You smile. It's the most beautiful letter you've ever seen, and as you lie there, half asleep and fully depleted, you make yourself a promise: never again. You'll sleep next time. You'll start early. You'll be responsible. But deep down, you know that when the next deadline looms and panic whispers sweetly in your ear, you'll reach for that blue and silver can once more, because in the sleep deprivation Olympics, nobody learns. They just stay awake longer. You overhear a news anchor gravely announcing that Red Bull has been banned in a handful of countries for public health reasons. You contemplate whether that's a flex or a warning. Turns out, when your flagship product contains enough caffeine, sugar, and mystifying compounds to make a hummingbird sprint laps, some governments raise an eyebrow. Or both. Red Bull isn't just an energy drink. It's a geopolitical event. In certain corners of the world, it's been banned, suspended, or slapped with so many warning labels it might as well come with a waiver. And the wild part? That only made people want it more. You scroll through the list. Norway, Denmark, France, at one point, and a few other countries briefly said no thanks to the winged beverage of chaos. Officially, the reasoning was health concerns. specifically related to caffeine overload, taurine mysteries, and the alarming number of teenagers using Red Bull as a substitute for common sense. Unofficially, we suspect someone's uncle drank 3 cans and attempted to become lightning. In these countries, Red Bull wasn't sold in stores. You needed to cross a border, find a black market vending machine, or smuggle it in under the pretense of imported electrolyte water. Red Bull became contraband, banned for your own good, like fireworks or rational TikTok challenges. In France, it was forbidden until 2008, and during that time, it became the forbidden fruit of club culture. DJs would whisper about it backstage like it was an ancient relic. You got the stuff? Only 2 cans left. Bless you. The bans weren't random. Health officials pointed to a few incidents. People experiencing heart palpitations, sudden anxiety spirals, or, in one legendary case, attempting to arm wrestle a lamppost. Emergency rooms reported upticks in young adults, arriving with symptoms best described as fast-forwarding through a panic attack. Doctors warned that mixing Red Bull with physical exertion, or worse, alcohol, was like asking your cardiovascular system to perform a magic trick with no rehearsal. Meanwhile, Red Bull's marketing machine leaned in. They didn't say the bans were a badge of honor, but the vibe was very much banned in some countries, loved in all others. It was outlaw energy, rebellious hydration. Drinking it was an act of defiance against sleep, moderation, and government dietary guidelines. And for a certain kind of person, usually under 30, usually operating on 3 hours of sleep and vibes, that made it irresistible. Of course, the bans were eventually lifted, often after reformulations or long debates about whether energy drinks were really more dangerous than, say, espresso heavy metal concerts or unmoderated internet forums. In most places, Red Bull returned to shelves with a slightly modified label, a few extra disclaimers, and a vibe of "we won," kind of. But the medical drama didn't stop there. Over the years, Red Bull has popped up in more than a few case studies. Cardiologists cite it in footnotes. ER doctors can recognize the empty can by the bedside before they even check vitals. You hear phrases like caffeine-induced arrhythmia and acute agitation with mild confusion, and think, ah yes, a typical Thursday. Despite all this, the drink persists. It's legal, it's everywhere, and it still sells by the billions. Which leaves you wondering, how did a product once considered a public health menace end up on sale next to orange juice? The answer, most likely, is capitalism. That, and the enduring human belief that energy is good, even if it comes wrapped in warnings and a metallic aftertaste. You take a sip, pause, and listen closely. Somewhere, your heart ticks up a beat. Just one. You're fine. Probably. You Google countries that banned Red Bull while watching your eyelid twitch in the mirror. Was it a flex? Or a warning? Honestly, maybe both. But as long as it's still legal in your zip code, the siren call of caffeine in a can remains impossible to ignore. Because let's face it, if your beverage hasn't been banned at least once, is it even worth drinking? It's 2004. Everyone at the bar is ordering Jaeger bombs. The sticky floors and high-pitched shrieks are all that remain. You question whether this counts as a cultural renaissance or a mass hallucination. Ah, yes, the Jaeger bomb, a drink that defined a generation of regrettable decisions and permanently damaged vocal cords. The ritual was always the same. A shot of Jägermeister dropped into a half can of Red Bull, chugged before you could remember what dignity tasted like. It wasn't so much a cocktail as a controlled explosion of flavor and chaos, served in a pint glass. You didn't sip it, you didn't enjoy it. You survived it. This was the golden age of nightlife excess. iPods were still novel, trucker hats were somehow fashionable, and reality TV hadn't yet reached its final boss form. The soundtrack to every night was either Yeah by Usher or a remix that added more cowbell, and beneath it all, the rhythmic thudding of Jaeger bombs hitting tabletops, followed by someone shouting "Let's go" like they'd just received divine instructions from the gods of bad judgment. You remember your first. You didn't want it, but peer pressure is a powerful drug, second only to the actual drug-like effects of a Jaeger bomb. Someone handed you the concoction with a grin that said, "You'll thank me later," and a subtext that screamed, "You absolutely won't." The drop was dramatic. The taste, a blend of licorice, cough syrup, and cold metal. Your brain recoiled. Your heart double pumped. And then you were awake. For the next hour, you felt unstoppable. You danced aggressively to songs you didn't like. You told strangers you loved them. You invented new dance moves with names like the spreadsheet and the overtime wiggle. Your entire body was lit up like a Christmas tree on fast forward. And yet a calm voice in the back of your mind whispered, "This can't be good." It wasn't. But that didn't matter. The Jaeger bomb era was powered by denial and reinforced by volume. The bars knew what they were doing. 2-for-1 specials, themed nights, entire menus built around the concept of drinking like a caffeinated Viking. Somewhere, a bartender with a sociology degree realized this wasn't just drinking, it was ritual. The drop, the chug, the blackout, the apology texts. The cultural penetration was unmatched. Bachelorette parties, frat house basements, casual Thursdays that got out of hand. Every time you thought the trend was over, someone would revive it with a tray of shot glasses and the dead-eyed determination of someone who didn't plan to remember tomorrow. Red Bull, for its part, leaned into the madness. If there was a party, their logo was there, on the mini-fridge, on the t-shirt, occasionally shaved into someone's head. But behind the shrieks and slams, there were consequences. Paramedics started calling it the heart attack in a glass. Emergency rooms saw an uptick in cases that sounded like urban legends. He drank 4 and tried to backflip off a vending machine. Doctors quietly begged the public to stop mixing stimulants with depressants. The public, in response, invented the mega Jaeger bomb. Because of course they did. Eventually, the wave broke. Hangovers got harder. Knees got older. The same people who once did 6 bombs and danced until 4 a.m. now flinch at the sound of a shot glass tapping a countertop. But every once in a while, at a wedding, a reunion, or the kind of night that just feels like a mistake, you'll hear the call again. One more round, and someone, somewhere, will whisper, "Jaeger bombs?" You'll lock eyes across the bar. No words. Just understanding. It's 2004 again, if only for a moment. You raise the glass. You drop it in, you drink, and once again you question everything. Especially the floor, which is somehow stickier than science allows. Somewhere in a boardroom, executives plot the downfall of their rivals. You sip your Red Bull and wonder what happens if you mix it with Monster. Spoiler: don't. This isn't just a battle of beverages, it's a caffeine-fueled Cold War. Red Bull and Monster don't just share shelf space. They share a mutual grudge and a burning desire to be the drink that keeps you awake through terrible decisions. What began as a niche market for overachieving students and underslept warehouse workers has turned into a gladiatorial arena where brands trade blows using lawsuits, mascots, and marketing campaigns so aggressive they may qualify as psychological warfare. Red Bull arrived first, the mysterious import with a weird taste and a slogan so bold it promised flight. For years, it held the crown as the king of caffeinated chaos. Then Monster rolled in like a tattooed linebacker with tribal flames, promising more caffeine, more sugar, more can. Where Red Bull had tiny, sleek containers and implied European sophistication, Monster had 16-ounce cans, the size of personal defense weapons and branding, that looked like it had just bench-pressed a dirt bike. Monster wasn't subtle. Their brand aesthetic screamed bro science and burnout energy. Their logo, a radioactive green claw mark, looked like it was designed by a guy who definitely owns a lifted pickup and thinks hydration is for the weak. Meanwhile, Red Bull kept its wings. Their commercials stayed weird and philosophical, and their extreme sports sponsorships remained the stuff of lawsuits waiting to happen. The two drinks coexisted, but not peacefully. Behind the scenes, tensions boiled. Monster's rise in the early 2000s chipped away at Red Bull's monopoly, especially among demographics who believed more ounces equaled more power. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to be energized. You had to look energized, sweaty, shirtless, and permanently ready to flip a four-wheeler. And while Red Bull remained the drink of skydivers, students, and suspiciously twitchy startup founders, Monster carved its niche with gamers, gym rats, and everyone who had ever referred to sleep as a mindset. But this wasn't just market competition, it was corporate combat. Lawsuits flew like badly aimed darts at a frat house party. Monster sued Red Bull for unfair marketing. Red Bull countersued for trademark infringement. One lawsuit alleged that the word energy was being monopolized. Another argued over the shade of green. Boardrooms became battlegrounds. Legal teams mainlined espresso and crafted PowerPoint slides with phrases like demographic dominance and market share attrition. And through it all, the drinks kept getting stronger. Red Bull rolled out new flavors, sugar-free editions, and limited-run cans that looked like you needed a security clearance just to open them. Monster responded with drinks that had names like Chaos, Assault, and Pipeline Punch, which sounds less like a beverage and more like something you'd need a lawyer for. You, the consumer, were caught in the middle. You tried both. One made you feel like solving a math problem while jumping out of a helicopter. The other made you feel like punching drywall and telling your manager to just trust the vision. Mixing them? That was a mistake you only made once. For 15 minutes, you could smell time. Then your vision went sideways, and your left eyelid started sending Morse code. To this day, the rivalry rages on. Red Bull sponsors art installations on glaciers and freestyle cliff diving tournaments. Monster sponsors motocross events, where the only rule seems to be go faster until gravity notices. Their audiences don't overlap much, except for that one guy in your office who drinks both before 10 a.m. and is somehow always cold. In the end, it's more than branding, it's ideology. Red Bull wants you to believe you can transcend limitations. Monster wants you to obliterate them. Either way, your heart rate's going up. And somewhere, in two opposing skyscrapers, two boardrooms full of execs raise cans, glare across the skyline, and whisper the same thing. We're winning. And honestly, neither of them is wrong. You're just the collateral damage. With heart palpitations, did you hear about the guy who drank 12 Red Bulls and his eyeball popped out? You nod solemnly and repeat this story at every party for the next 6 years. This is how legends are born. Not in laboratories or marketing meetings, but in dorm rooms, locker rooms, and late-night Denny's booths lit by the flickering glow of bad decisions. Red Bull, for all its real-world drama and legal dust-ups, lives in a parallel universe. One where caffeine has magical properties. Human organs are disturbingly detachable, and every can is one sip away from a supernatural event. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Someone's cousin's friend drank 5 cans in an hour and started speaking fluent Latin. A guy once stayed awake for 4 straight days and saw through time. A woman allegedly sprinted across a football field, scaled a fence, and proposed to her ex in front of a marching band powered solely by Red Bull and heartbreak. These aren't just stories, they're fables, caffeine-soaked cautionary tales passed down through generations of undergraduates and warehouse employees. The specifics change, but the formula is always the same. Someone drinks too much, something unexplainable happens, and the moral is both terrifying and oddly impressive. It's not enough that Red Bull gives you wings. It apparently also gives you temporary invisibility, super strength, and a weird craving for cold spaghetti. The genius here isn't even Red Bull's doing. These stories build themselves. Red Bull just made a product so intense, so ripe with possibility, that the human imagination did the rest. It's the drink equivalent of an open-ended question. What happens if? The answer is always dramatic, never medically confirmed, and 0% repeatable in group chats. You remember the first time you heard one of these stories. You were young, impressionable, and still believed your kidneys had warranty coverage. A friend leaned in during lunch and whispered, "This guy at my cousin's school drank 9 Red Bulls and his heart exploded." You didn't ask for sources, you just accepted it as fact and made a mental note to cap yourself at 8. Urban legends like these create their own ecosystem. Someone's got a story about mixing Red Bull with espresso and blacking out in IKEA. Another person swears their friend grew a third eyelid after an all-nighter. There are tales of people failing drug tests, teleporting briefly, or hearing radio frequencies in their fillings. It's all nonsense. It's all perfect. Of course, there's always one friend who fact-checks. They pull out a government health site, highlight the safe caffeine limits, and say things like, "Actually, you'd need to drink 80 cans for your organs to liquefy." You ignore them. That's not the point. The point is that Red Bull has become so iconically chaotic that even fictional overdoses seem plausible. And some stories are eerily persistent. The one about the guy who had a heart attack mid-bench press? Classic. The woman who drank a six-pack and solved a Rubik's Cube blindfolded? Beautiful. The dude who chased his landlord down the street after one too many Jaeger bombs and demanded a rent decrease using interpretive dance? Okay. That one might be true. You start to realize something. Red Bull isn't just an energy drink. It's an origin story generator. Everyone knows someone who's had a moment of sheer, inexplicable power or utter public collapse. Red Bull is the beverage of bold beginnings and blurry endings. It turns mild errands into epic quests and study sessions into battle scenes. So you keep the legends alive, you tell the stories, you embellish the details. You swear that you knew the guy who tried to fight a vending machine and lost. Because deep down, we want the myth to be real. We want our drinks to come with consequences, our nights to carry risk, and our stories to end with a gasp or a Google search. Red Bull may never actually give you wings, but it'll give you a tale. And in the caffeine folklore Hall of Fame, that's all anyone really wants. Red Bull owns a racing team. The cars are fast, the drivers are faster, and somewhere, someone is probably driving on pure caffeine and spite. This isn't just corporate branding, it's Red Bull manifesting velocity. Because somewhere along the line, someone at headquarters looked at a can of energy drink and thought, you know what would really sell this? 200 miles per hour and a strong chance of international litigation. And thus, Red Bull Racing was born. Welcome to the world of Formula One, where the only thing more intense than the G-forces is the drama. Red Bull didn't just sponsor a team, they built one from the ground up. In 2005, they took over the struggling Jaguar team, slapped some wings on it, figuratively and quite literally, and turned it into a hyper-caffeinated juggernaut. Within a few years, they were no longer the underdogs. They were the high-octane overlords of the grid. Now, let's paint the picture. The pit crew? Lightning fast. The drivers? Global celebrities with reflexes sharp enough to swat a fly at 190 miles per hour. The cars? Sleek, aerodynamic missiles fueled by engineering wizardry and what we can only assume is the collective willpower of several sleepless interns. And at the center of it all, a brand whose main product is sold in convenience stores next to bubblegum and beef jerky. The irony is exquisite. Red Bull Racing isn't just good, they're dominant. Multiple constructors' championships, several world titles for drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen, all while the team principal, Christian Horner, navigates the paddock like a caffeine-fueled Machiavelli, smiling politely as he hurls metaphorical daggers across press conferences. It's like Shakespeare with more carbon fiber. And the drama? Oh, the drama. Formula One isn't just about racing. It's about lawsuits, rivalries, and post-race interviews that sound like high school cafeteria spats. Red Bull's rivalries are the stuff of legend. Mercedes, Ferrari, that one time with McLaren. There's always tension. Someone's always upset. Someone's always accusing someone else of copying someone else's rear wing design. It's less sportsmanship and more Spy Kids, pit lane edition. Off the track, Red Bull's influence is even more absurd. Their hospitality suite, known as the Energy Station, is a floating palace of espresso machines, leather sofas, and whatever kind of tuna billionaires eat. Meanwhile, the actual energy drink remains unchanged, a can of oddly metallic citrus and a promise that you'll be vibrating shortly. But here's the genius of it all. Red Bull took something as niche and elite as Formula One and turned it into a global lifestyle. Suddenly, people who didn't know what a downforce coefficient was started tuning in. Kids started dreaming not just of being astronauts or influencers, but race car drivers with branded jumpsuits and designer haircuts. Red Bull made speed cool. Dangerous, yes. Excessive, absolutely, but undeniably cool. Of course, it wouldn't be a Red Bull operation without a few legal hiccups. Complaints about unfair advantage, technical rule bending, and the occasional spicy team radio transmission that has to be bleeped for TV. But Red Bull's whole identity has always flirted with the edge. They don't toe the line, they pirouette over it in a carbon fiber ballet of regulatory risk-taking. And through it all, the drink remains. In the garages, on the team wall, in the hands of exhausted engineers trying to shave milliseconds off lap times, because when you're dealing with machines that cost more than private islands and go faster than most commercial aircraft, you need fuel for the body and the brand. So the next time you sip a Red Bull and feel a little jolt, remember, that same logo is hurtling around corners in Monaco, ducking lawsuits in Abu Dhabi, and possibly deciding world titles in Brazil. Not bad for a drink that started as a Thai hangover cure. You don't have to understand racing to appreciate the madness. You just have to know this. Red Bull didn't just give you wings. It gave them 4 tires, a V6 turbo hybrid engine, and a serious need for speed. Your gym teacher lectures you about natural energy. Meanwhile, half the class is vibrating from their 3rd can. Science loses again. This is the battlefield of adolescent logic. On one side, a whiteboard scrawled with diagrams of the human heart and phrases like balanced nutrition and 8 hours of sleep. On the other side, a classroom full of teenagers running on Pop-Tarts, anxiety, and enough Red Bull to power a minor parade float. It's not a debate. It's a caffeine-fueled standoff between idealism and sheer willpower. You sit at your desk, gently shaking, one leg bouncing like it's training for a triathlon. Your eyes are dilated. You're not sure what chapter you're on, but you are certain you could wrestle a small raccoon and win. Across the room, someone is furiously highlighting an empty notebook. No one remembers what the lesson is about. The only thing anyone is absorbing is synthetic B vitamins and raw defiance. The gym teacher. Also the health teacher. Because budgets has that look in their eyes. The one that says they've fought this battle before and lost. They point at the food pyramid with the exhausted urgency of someone who once believed in vegetables. Sleep, they say, is essential. You nod while mentally calculating how many more cans you can have before you start seeing sound. To their credit, they try. They talk about blood sugar spikes and crashes, about the long-term effects of over-caffeination, about the importance of hydration. They even say the phrase liver enzymes with genuine concern. But it's like trying to explain jazz to a blender. Nobody's listening. Somebody's heartbeat is audible. Someone else is clicking a pen at 200 BPM. The room hums. Your friend next to you leans over and whispers, "I think I can smell colors." You nod. Same. You're both sweating slightly, even though it's 68 degrees and no one has moved in 10 minutes. Then comes the chart. The recommended daily caffeine intake chart. Adults, 400 milligrams. Teenagers, preferably none. You glance at your desk, 2 empty cans, one half finished, and a backup in your hoodie pocket. By the numbers, you've entered the danger zone. By teenage logic, you're just getting started. The teacher hands out worksheets titled Understanding Your Body's Energy Needs. Irony. You fill yours out with a pencil so fast it snaps. You switch to pen and finish the whole thing in 3 minutes. It's illegible, but it feels correct. You've answered every question with the confidence of someone who hasn't blinked in an hour. Somewhere in the back, someone's stomach audibly growls. Someone else giggles. Someone else is whispering about trying to mix Red Bull with protein powder to create alpha energy. It sounds like a war crime. It also sounds kind of genius. Eventually, the bell rings. You bolt upright. The teacher sighs, defeated. You feel like you could sprint to your next class, write a haiku, and bench press a traffic cone all before the tardy bell. The world is crisp. Too crisp. You're buzzing like a neon sign that says poor life choices. And here's the twist. You know your teacher is right. Deep down, under the thrum of chemicals, you know sleep is good. You know hydration matters. But you're re-16. You've got 3 exams, a group project, and an irrational fear of not being perceived as high energy. You don't want balance. You want results. So the cycle continues. Health class becomes just another obstacle between you and your 4th period crash. The Red Bull is cold. The rebellion is carbonated. And the lesson, whatever it was, is long forgotten. Because in high school, science doesn't stand a chance against convenience, flavor, and the irresistible lure of feeling invincible for 45 minutes. Felix Baumgartner is Jumping from Space, sponsored by Red Bull. You sit on your couch, eating chips, contemplating how a beverage has done more for human flight than the Wright brothers. It's 2012. You're watching a live stream. Eyes wide, fingers orange from snack dust. While a man in a pressurized suit stands on the edge of the known world, staring down at the curvature of Earth like he's deciding whether to deliver pizza or re-enter the atmosphere at Mach 1. The camera pans over the logo, Red Bull Stratos, and it suddenly hits you. This isn't just a stunt. It's marketing. And it's working. You're not even thirsty. But somehow your brain whispers, maybe I do need a Red Bull. After all, if it's good enough for a guy falling from the stratosphere, It's probably fine for staying awake during your afternoon meeting. You've never jumped from space, but you have answered emails after lunch. Same energy. Let's rewind a bit. For decades, marketing was pretty straightforward. TV commercials, jingles, maybe a billboard with a cow holding a sign. Red Bull said, "No thanks." Instead, they launched a man into near space, pointed a dozen high-resolution cameras at him, and turned the whole thing into a live global broadcast, watched by more than 9 million people. That's not an ad, that's an event, that's history. And it wasn't just flashy, it was terrifying. Felix stood in a floating capsule 24 miles above Earth, about to become a meat-based meteor. The science was real, the stakes were high. There were countdowns, heart monitors, and emergency teams standing by. Somewhere, a Red Bull executive was sweating not just from nerves, but from brand liability. But oh, the payoff. He jumps. At first, silence. Then spinning. Then velocity. Then a brief moment where everyone collectively forgets how breathing works. And then parachute, landing, applause, relief. Red Bull becomes the first beverage in history to punch gravity in the face. Back home, your chip falls out of your mouth. You blink. Did that just happen? It did. And Red Bull made sure you remembered. It was the most ambitious crossover event since coffee met cream. They didn't just sponsor an athlete. They sponsored human progress. The jump broke 3 world records, including highest freefall and fastest freefall speed, over 840 mph, in case your Monday wasn't humbling enough. NASA scientists nodded respectfully. Middle schoolers added Felix to their hero lists between Iron Man and Shrek. And every boardroom in America quietly panicked because suddenly every brand was being compared to a man falling from space. And the best part? It didn't even feel like an ad. It felt like something out of a sci-fi movie. Except real. And live. And powered by a drink once banned in Norway. This was the moment Red Bull evolved. It stopped being just a beverage and became a narrative. A philosophy. A can-sized symbol of human absurdity, ambition, and branding so bold it needed a parachute. In hindsight, it's a miracle the campaign wasn't called Red Bull, yeet from the heavens, but instead they played it serious, noble, scientific. They wore lab coats over marketing suits and said things like exploration of human limits, translation, hold our cans. And while you may never jump from space, you carry the memory of that stunt like a weird badge of honor. You watched a man leap into history and stick the landing. You remember the countdown, the fall, the gasp, and you remember the logo. So the next time you see a Red Bull in a gas station fridge and think, "That's too much sugar," just remember, it's also the only energy drink with a resume that includes re-entry velocity. Not bad for a company that started by selling sugar water with a side of adrenaline. Red Bull doesn't just give you wings. It gives you airspeed velocity, G-force trauma, and one hell of a PR strategy. Results may vary. You sit in a clinic reading pamphlets about heart palpitations and reconsider your beverage choices for the 4th time this week. The air smells like disinfectant and quiet judgment. You're perched on a vinyl chair that squeaks every time you shift your weight, clutching a stack of brochures featuring clip art hearts and cartoon kidneys with sad faces. The doctor will see you soon, right after you finish re-evaluating every life choice that led you to a moment where you're Googling taurine overdose symptoms while your Apple Watch begs you to breathe. You came in for a checkup. Maybe a little chest tightness. Maybe the creeping suspicion that your body is trying to file a formal complaint. What you didn't expect was to be sat down and asked, in the calmest voice possible, "So, how many energy drinks would you say you consume per day?" You hesitate. Because the truth is somewhere between two, and please don't call the CDC. You say, sometimes a few, depending on the day. The doctor nods, types something that definitely isn't very normal response, and hands you a pamphlet titled Caffeine, the legal drug we ignore. Inside, there's a lot of talk about safe limits and moderation, two concepts that feel deeply incompatible with Red Bull's core vibe. You see a diagram of a nervous system that looks suspiciously like yours. Mid-Zoom meeting. There's a list of symptoms: jitteriness, insomnia, heart palpitations, anxiety, stomach upset, existential dread. You check every box like you're playing caffeinated bingo. Then come the studies. You've seen them before. The ones that start with, in a double-blind study, and end with something like, may cause elevated blood pressure in rodents. You skim through the statistics. One study says Red Bull improves alertness. Another says it increases your risk of spontaneous tap dancing due to overstimulated leg muscles. A third claims mixing energy drinks and alcohol turns your body into a confused theme park. But here's the problem. None of them agree. One expert says energy drinks are fine in moderation. Another says they're the reason your ancestors invented herbal tea. A third suggests we're all living in a caffeine-fueled simulation and nothing is real anyway. And then, inevitably, comes the disclaimer: individual results may vary. It's the medical equivalent of good luck out there. Meanwhile, the Red Bull marketing team is somewhere jumping out of helicopters and sponsoring symphonies of chaos. Their website talks about performance, focus, and vitality, which sounds like a word you use when you've legally run out of synonyms for energy. No mention of the part where your spleen is now conducting Morse code with your ribcage. You think back to the first time you tried a Red Bull. You were young, naive. You didn't know what taurine was. You just liked the taste, the fizz, the idea that maybe, just maybe, this can of mystery liquid could turn you into a productivity wizard. And it did, kind of, until it didn't. Until you found yourself lying awake at 3 a.m. Googling, "Can your heart vibrate?" Now, here you are, in a clinic, reading the fine print, listening to your pulse echo through your eardrums like a tiny techno festival. The nurse asks if you want water. You nod. You drink it like it's holy. You wonder if this is growth, or just a temporary break between cans. Eventually, the doctor returns, gives you some advice, mentions balance, sleep hygiene, hydration, maybe switching to green tea. You nod. Smile. Say, "I'll try." You mean it. Mostly. As you leave, you pass a vending machine in the lobby. You hesitate. You stare at the glowing cans like they're forbidden fruit. They sparkle. They beckon. One says sugar-free, which makes you laugh, like that's ever been the issue. You walk away, proud, a little sad, mostly stable. For now, you try a sip of Red Bull and suddenly find yourself experimenting with other energy drinks. Before you know it, you're rating flavors and thinking about starting a podcast called Wired and Tired. It starts innocently. A single Red Bull at 10 a.m. before your stats final. You're just tired, you tell yourself. Everyone drinks these. It's no big deal. You crack the can. That familiar hiss. The scent. A tangy mix of metal, citrus, and ambition. You drink. You pass your test. You feel powerful. The next day, you're back. This time, it's the tropical flavor. Not bad. Tastes like beach regret. Then the sugar-free one, because health. Then the watermelon edition. Then the peach edition. Then the one in the matte black can with a name that sounds like it came from a rejected Batman villain. Red Bull. Night mode. You become curious. If Red Bull is good, what else is out there? You drift toward the beverage aisle, like a moth to a fluorescent flame. You see them. So many cans. Monster, Rockstar, Bang Energy. Drinks with fonts so aggressive they look like they could punch you through the label. You grab one. You try it. It's sweet. It's terrifying. It tastes like somebody tried to liquefy EDM. You spiral. Now you're in deep. You start saying things like, I prefer the mouthfeel of this one, and the aftertaste really lingers, but in a nostalgic way. You become the guy in line at the gas station holding two different flavors and weighing the pros and cons like you're selecting wine pairings for a Michelin star meal. Except the pairing is math homework and panic. Soon, you're keeping a ranking spreadsheet. You've built a tier list. You argue about flavor profiles online. You've subscribed to a subreddit called R divided by energy drinks, and you're this close to posting a review thread called My Week with Celsius, a thermogenic tragedy. You start noticing things, like which brands are carbonated, which ones sneak in electrolytes, which ones are lying about being sugar-free. You're no longer just drinking, you're critiquing. You think, maybe I'll start a podcast. You already have the name, Wired and Tired, Tales from the Caffeine Spiral. First episode, Why the Mango Loco Monster Gave Me Enlightenment and a Migraine. You record a test intro. You play it back. You sound like a motivational speaker trapped in a wind tunnel, but you're proud. You've entered the culture. You start noticing other energy drink people. You develop radar. You see the guy in line holding a 4-pack of Reign and know instantly he hasn't slept in 2 days and is either a fitness influencer or in denial. You spot a girl sipping Ghost and nod respectfully, acknowledging her bravery. You pass a student drinking something called zombie fuel, toxic sludge, and wonder if that's still technically considered a liquid. One day, someone offers you a coffee. You laugh. Coffee? What is this? Casual energy? You have seen things. You have tasted things. You once drank a neon pink beverage that claimed to activate cognitive potential, and then you alphabetized your sock drawer and cried about the universe. Eventually, you crash. Of course you do. You hit that wall where even the most electrified syrup can't save you. Your body sends a cease and desist letter to your brain. You sit on the floor, surrounded by cans, and whisper, I just wanted to stay awake. And yet, the next morning, there you are, back at the fridge, staring into the shimmering rainbow of metallic hope, reaching for the can that promises focus, energy, and maybe just enough serotonin to answer emails before noon. You're not addicted, you're just invested. Years later, you sit on your porch, staring at the empty can pyramid you built in your 20s. Was it all worth it? You're not sure, but at least you have a story, or 12, for your grandkids about the wild, winged years. The cans are dusty now, faded by time and poor storage decisions, but you kept them, each one a monument to youthful enthusiasm and cardiovascular risk. Some people keep photo albums. You kept 473 milliluminum reminders that you once lived fast, crashed harder, and swore repeatedly you'd never drink one again. Before doing exactly that the next day, you take a sip of chamomile tea, the grown-up beverage of choice for people who used to chug Red Bull at 3 a.m., while writing term papers with sweaty determination and lo-fi beats playlists. Your heart, now more of a gentle metronome than a techno drumline, thanks you for switching lanes. But every now and then, it skips just a little, like it remembers. You think back to the late nights, the early mornings, and the long stretches of time where sleep was a rumor and energy drinks were the answer to everything. Deadlines, road trips, final exams, existential dread. You weren't just consuming a beverage, you were participating in a lifestyle, a performance, a rebellion against the natural order of rest. And oh, the adventures, the paper you wrote in one sitting that still somehow got a B+, the time you mixed Red Bull with vodka, optimism, and no plan, the day you tried 3 different flavors in one afternoon and briefly forgot your own postal code. Every can has a memory attached, some triumphant, some mildly concerning, all weirdly nostalgic. It wasn't sustainable. Of course not. Your body started sending warning signs around can number 600. The crashes got heavier, the recoveries slower. You started feeling your blood pressure. One day you drank a Red Bull and immediately needed a nap, which felt like betrayal on a cellular level. That's when you knew the winged years were over. But the stories? They stayed. You tell them now, half joke, half legend. Your grandkids sit cross-legged on the floor, wide-eyed as you describe that one night in Vegas or the great dance marathon collapse of 2009. You gloss over the questionable decisions and emphasize the courage, the boldness, the sheer audacity of staying awake for 42 hours and attempting to build IKEA furniture during hour 38. They don't fully understand what a Jaeger bomb is, and honestly, you prefer it that way. Let them believe it was some kind of medieval challenge. Let them imagine a world where energy came in cans and decisions were powered by synthetic taurine and raw hubris. And weirdly, you are proud, not of the chemical consumption necessarily, but of what it represented. Your willingness to chase experience, to push boundaries, and your sleep schedule to be gloriously, exhaustingly alive. You made it through the chaos with only mild liver damage and an impressive collection of branded hats. That's something. Now, as you sip your sleepy time blend and consider a crossword puzzle your former self would have used as a coaster, you feel a strange peace. Red Bull was a phase, a bright, twitchy, overstimulated phase. And it passed. But oh, what a ride. Was it worth it? You'll never know for sure. But as your grandchild asks, wait, you chose to drink that stuff? You lean back, smile, and say, let me tell you about the time we tried to build a raft out of Red Bull cans. Because if history teaches us anything, it's this. Caffeine fades, memory blurs, but a good story? That lives forever, even if it's a little shaky. You're stuck in a terminal at 4 a.m., surrounded by bleary-eyed travelers and a single haunted vending machine humming with promise. The only thing colder than the floor is the can of Red Bull in your hand. One sip later, you're suddenly wide awake. The only human in a crowd of people who look like they've been cursed by a sleep-deprived witch. Congratulations. You're the leader of the world's most caffeinated zombie apocalypse, clutching a boarding pass and regretting everything. This is not just a layover. It's a test of human endurance, an unofficial Olympic event where the medals are made of plastic security bins, and your opponents are 67 other people trying to nap upright on molded seats. There are no rules, no mercy, and no electrical outlets that work. You've entered terminal limbo, where time stops, logic fades, and all things are measured in gate changes and Red Bull half-lives. You'd been up for 22 hours before you even got here. Your Uber driver smelled like despair and wet socks. Security confiscated your shampoo, your dignity, and a half-eaten granola bar you swear wasn't a weapon. And now, you're marooned between boarding groups, surrounded by strangers who've forgotten their names, and a digital display board that keeps blinking between delayed and give up. So you did what any rational, semi-conscious person would do. You approached the glowing machine, inserted your last crumpled bill, and purchased salvation in the form of aluminum. The can felt like prophecy in your hands, cold, slightly sticky, unnaturally light. You cracked it open, took a sip, and boom. Caffeine activation. Your vision sharpens. The PA announcements become intelligible. You can read again. You look around and realize these people are barely alive. The man 2 seats over is slumped forward, breathing shallowly into his own suitcase. A woman is curled around her travel pillow, like it's the last remnant of hope. A child, wide-eyed and sugar-fueled, is playing Baby Shark on loop with no headphones. The horror. The horror. And you? You are their chosen one. The Red Bull has kicked in like a military operation. Your posture straightens, your thoughts organize into bullet points. For the first time in hours, you feel something close to clarity. You recheck your gate, reprint your boarding pass, just in case. And then, God help you, you start helping others. Mom, your gate changed. It's now C27. No, it's okay. I'll walk you there. You're giving out directions like an airport prophet. You remind someone to hydrate. You help a dad find his missing boarding group. You discover a working outlet and announce it like you've found fire. You have become, against all odds, a one-person airline support staff. No vest, no authority, just raw caffeine and willpower. But like all power, this has a price. By 6:15 a.m., you've already walked 5 miles across stained carpet. Your Red Bull high begins to fray. Your hands shake slightly. Your jaw has locked itself into a polite smile that won't go away. You try to sit down but forget how chairs work. A flight attendant sees you pacing and quietly radios for a wellness check on that individual in row 3. Your flight boards. You stumble to your seat, middle of course, and attempt to store your bag while maintaining balance, dignity, and bladder control. You succeed at 2 out of 3. As the plane ascends, you close your eyes and feel your body begin to shut down like an overheating laptop. You enter a trance state. Not quite sleep, not quite awareness. A liminal purgatory, known only to those who've mixed taurine and trauma. When you land, you're technically alive. You navigate the baggage claim with the grace of a haunted mannequin. You don't remember where you parked. You don't remember your last name. But one thing is certain. You survived the airport zombie apocalypse. All it took was 1 can of Red Bull, 600 poor decisions, and a complete disregard for your circadian rhythm. You may never fly again, but you'll never forget. You're squinting at the side of a can, trying to do caffeine math on 3 hours of sleep. Wait, so 2 cans is 160 milligrams. Is that a lot? The calculator on your phone is no help, and neither is your racing pulse. Meanwhile, your friend assures you it's fine. He's on his 4th and claims he can see through time. You both agree to ignore the warning label, because that's just part of the Red Bull tradition. This is the point where numbers stop being helpful and start becoming terrifying. You're not a scientist. You're a tired human being trying to decide whether consuming a 3rd can of liquid adrenaline will help you write a coherent email or make you see God. The label says 80 milligrams of caffeine per can. Sounds small, right? You've had coffee before. You've had lattes, mochas. Even that one time you tried cold brew and didn't sleep for 2 business days. But something about Red Bull hits different. Maybe it's the carbonation. Maybe it's the taurine. Maybe it's the whisper of regret that's built into the formula. So you start doing the math. 80 milligrams per can, multiplied by 2 cans, that's 160 milligrams. Okay, the FDA recommends no more than 400 milligrams a day. So, technically, you're safe, right? Right? then why does your heart feel like it's doing the Macarena? Your friend is unfazed. He's on his fourth can and casually talking about quantum physics. Or maybe just thinks he is. He's blinking at a speed normally reserved for hummingbirds and distant satellites. It's all mental, he says, as if caffeine operates on belief alone. You nod like that makes sense. It doesn't. You go back to the label. It's written in font size 6 and includes ingredients that sound like spells. Glucuronolactone, B-group vitamins, and the infamous taurine, an amino acid that somehow sounds both medicinal and suspiciously mythical. You wonder if you should be able to pronounce what you're drinking. You wonder if your stomach lining has regrets. But caffeine math doesn't stop at numbers. It's a state of mind. It's a negotiation between I have things to do and I would like to continue existing. Everyone has their limit. Some people feel jittery after one can. Others can down 3 and immediately fall asleep in a beanbag chair. Your cousin once drank 6 and rewired his router using only his willpower and a butter knife. The results vary. And then there's the mixing. You add coffee to the morning, maybe a chocolate bar, maybe some pre-workout powder because you thought it wouldn't count. Suddenly, your caffeine intake isn't math anymore, it's a conspiracy theory. You're Googling symptoms of heart murmurs and can you taste colors. You're not sure if you're focused or just vibrating aggressively toward the concept of productivity. You try to hydrate, classic rookie mistake. Water? Too boring. You go for sparkling water. Then think, what if I just had another Red Bull instead? And that's the moment caffeine stops being a tool and starts being a lifestyle. And so the cycle continues. The label warns you not to exceed 2 cans in a day. You see it, acknowledge it, and file it in the same category as suggested serving size or terms and conditions. It's not that you don't care. It's just that you're deeply, gloriously in denial. Because Red Bull isn't just math. It's identity. It's chaos management. It's the voice that tells you, yes, you can finish that 10-page paper, clean the garage, and reorganize your apps before noon. It's the buzz in your veins that says, sleep is optional, but vibes are forever. Is 160 milligrams a lot? Depends who's asking. Depends if you're sitting or standing. Depends if you're ready to accept the consequences or simply outrun them. In the end, Red Bull math doesn't add up. It accelerates. It escalates. And before you know it, you've lost count, because counting requires calm, and calm left the chat 2 cans ago. It's 2007, and you've just crammed 27 Red Bulls into your tiny dorm fridge. The light goes out. The fridge starts to hum menacingly. At 3 a.m., there's a mysterious bang. Now everything inside smells faintly of citrus and panic. The RA just shakes her head and adds your name to a growing list of campus legends. Somewhere, a marketing executive smiles, knowing they've just sold their soul for one more brand engagement. This is how legends are born, not in glory, but in the quiet hum of overworked machinery and the sharp scent of carbonated failure. You didn't mean to test the structural limits of your mini-fridge. It started simply enough. A sale at the campus convenience store, a misguided sense of bulk buying economics, and the eternal logic of the broke college student. If I buy 12, it's basically a food group. So you stack them in, methodically, 2 rows deep, 3 cans high, like a proud engineer designing a bomb someone might mistake for a beverage pyramid. You close the door with a satisfying click, ignoring the slow whimper of your struggling fridge motor as it realized it had been asked to chill a small army of taurine-laced grenades. You went to bed, confident, a little smug, buzzing slightly from the test you drank just before midnight, but your sleep was uneasy. You dreamt of fizzing, of metallic laughter, of a strange citrusy fog rolling in across the quad. And then, boom, you bolted upright. At first, you thought the apocalypse had started in your dorm room. You stumbled toward the source of the noise, stepping on a hoodie, a philosophy textbook, and something sticky that may have once been a Pop-Tart. You opened the fridge. Disaster. Red Bull everywhere. A can had burst, violently, like a carbonated landmine. The inside of your fridge looked like a performance art piece about poor decisions. Your string cheese was floating in a puddle of sugary sorrow. Your leftover pizza had absorbed enough caffeine to now qualify as a stimulant. The explosion had been so intense it knocked over your roommate's probiotic yogurt, which now coated the walls in a tragic, dairy-based mural of loss. The smell? Incredible, like lime, aluminum, and remorse. Your eyes watered. You wiped your face with the sleeve of your hoodie and whispered, "I have made a terrible mistake." And then came the knock. The RA stood in the doorway, arms crossed, dead-eyed from 3 semesters of late-night nonsense. She looked at the open fridge, the Red Bull slick floor, the roommate trying to scrape caffeine off their copy of macroeconomics. A global approach. She didn't say a word. She just pulled out a clipboard, wrote something down, and added your name to what you can only assume was a secret list titled Future Lawsuit Risks. But deep down, you know she wasn't even mad. This wasn't the first time. It probably wouldn't be the last. Because Red Bull, in its glittering little cans, invites chaos. It doesn't just live on shelves. It creeps into lives. Dorm rooms, group projects, spontaneous road trips. And now, it had infiltrated your appliance. You cleaned the fridge, kind of. You salvaged what you could. You left the exploded can on your desk as a cautionary tale. The fridge never fully recovered. Neither did your roommate. But your story? Immortal. Because weeks later, you hear whispers in the cafeteria. Did you hear about the guy with the Red Bull fridge bomb? You lean back, sip a fresh can, and say nothing. Somewhere, a Red Bull brand manager includes this incident in a PowerPoint titled Unplanned Virality, Organic Moments That Build Loyalty. And somewhere else, another student is loading their own mini fridge, ignoring the hum, trusting the math, preparing to make history. So tonight, as you drift off, heart beating gently, limbs relaxed, and maybe just a hint of artificial citrus still lingering in the air, take a moment to be grateful for the small mercies of the modern world. No one is demanding that you run a marathon at midnight. No marketing executive is whispering in your ear about productivity. And your beverages probably won't give you actual wings or heart palpitations. Think about it. The Red Bull era was wild, a sleepless blur of questionable decisions, turbocharged adventures, and the kind of energy spikes that made medieval plagues look like a spa weekend. Somehow, humanity survived. We built monuments out of empty cans, believed in slogans, raced through college, and made it through Monday meetings fueled by nothing but hope, caffeine, and a suspicious amino acid called taurine. But history, even when it's sweetened and carbonated, is a story of resilience and sometimes outright stubbornness. For every crash, every sugar rush, and every caffeine-induced existential crisis, there's the reminder that people will always find new ways to chase a little thrill and live to tell the tale. So as you lie in your clean, quiet bed, far away from rave lights, bad karaoke, or your college roommate's exploding mini fridge, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to your body, your common sense, and the scientists who invented decaf. because the caffeinated chaos of Red Bull may have left its mark on history, but so did the laughter, the wild stories, and the absolute refusal to take sleep for granted. And that's something worth dreaming about. Rest easy, friends. May your dreams be peaceful, your heartbeat steady, and your night utterly, gloriously caffeine-free. Good night.